One falls again down the rabbit hole of London. It's been 9 years since I went to London. Normally, from about 1990 until 2013, I would go very regularly, once a month in the early 90s, shopping for books, CDs, records, as an adjunct to work, visiting head office when I worked for a company selling books internationally. It's easy to fall down the rabbit hole of London with books because it's always there. There's so much. There is so much. This is a great book about London, The London Compendium by Ed Glynard. Don't get the earlier edition with the black livery because the indexing was incorrect. But you can look up pretty much everywhere in here, get all the history and culture. It's an absolutely wonderful book. And I think today of Poland Street in Soho. All these theories about London in Sinclair's Lud Heat, in Ackroyd's Hawksmoor, about how Nicholas Hawksmoor's churches, you could string them together on ley lines and, you know, they're this occult space. I had a similar thing with the record shops. You walk down Oxford Street from HMV at Marble Arch to HMV at Tottenham Court Road, the largest record shop in Europe as it was, to the Virgin that was there. Then down Charing Cross Road to Cambridge Circus, you know, where Smiley and his guys hang out. And then down past the theatres to Piccadilly Circus, to HMV across the road from Timothy White's, and to Tower. You could draw a trapezium, and in the centre of those 5 record stores was Soho, where Mr. Hyde lived, where everything happens. There were record shops within them, Sister Ray. Personally, I can't stand record shops that keep their old and new records together. I like clear differentiation. But I ordered plenty from Sister Ray in my time, bought plenty there. Dress Circle, That's Entertainment it later became. The Specialist, who did soundtracks. My very first trip to London in the early 80s, I took the coach from Pontypridd. I think it was 3 hours. I walked from Victoria to Covent Garden, where they were then based. I bought 5 albums by Goblin. It cost me in the region of £70, and that was in the early 80s, but it was worth it. I didn't trust the tubes. I didn't think I'd be able to navigate them. What a fool I was. There are lots of Londons. There's Viking London. There's occult London. Merlin Coverley. This is great. I love Merlin Coverley. At heart, you feel he's a skeptic. He writes about the esoteric, psychogeography, hauntology, occult London, south, walking, all those things. He steps back, he's objective. Where he thinks things are slight, he says they're slight. He's a good writer. You should give him a go. Then of course there's Ian Sinclair's London, revisiting Whitechapel Scarlet Tracings, which I first read around about 1990. I had the Gold Mark limited edition, which Sinclair signed for me around about 92. What was it about, people asked me. I had a Paladin paperback as well, sadly long gone. And I said, it's about how if you hang around certain second-hand bookshops in London with certain book dealers, you get to find out who Jack the Ripper is. I've just reread it. It wasn't quite as esoteric as I recalled, but I guess I was a younger reader then. Downriver, I've dug this out as well. A Paladin hardcover. It's the sort of thing that makes people like me and Nicholas Royal get excited. I used to have a CD based on this book from somebody from Wire. I can't think which one of them it was. I played it once or twice. And these pictures have relevance to Sinclair's latest book, the one about his grandfather and Peru. So I'm going to read that again as well. Isn't it beautiful? I've just finished another London book, London City of Disappearances, again edited by Sinclair. It's got great stuff in it. Moorcock, Royal, Ballard, Chris Pettit. It's got lots of stuff which isn't so great in it as well. But looking through, B. Catling, Thomas de Quincey, Bill Drummond from the KLF. Quite liked his bit because it wasn't really about London. Jonathan Meades, Alan Moore, Jeff Nuttall. It goes on and on and on. Great anthology. You think of the parts of London you've never gained access to, you would never gain access to. The long vanished Soho of Colin Wilson, of Francis Bacon, all those characters, the Colony Club, drinking, painting, obscenity, cheerful and terrible. It's great fun. I think of Poland Street. Across the road from the old HMV, long gone now, Poland Street runs through down in the north to Broadwick Street in the south. You come up close to Piccadilly Circus, you've got to wind your way through, but you would. William Blake lived there. I think he may have been born there. The Tate Gallery edition, about the same size as the real thing, which I once saw on display in the London Library. The London Library, when Nick Rennis and I used to meet to talk about what we would include or wouldn't include in the 100 must-read books we did for Bloomsbury. Is it still there? I don't know. I was watching something about Blake the other day, and it was saying that Tiger, Tiger, which of course was used as the title for Alfred Bester's novel The Star's My Destination in the UK, a much better title, was a political poem. That may be so. I personally like to think it's just about a tiger. The fearful symmetry. I always thought he was a cute little guy. He's got a little smiling feline face, like Smudge, my cat. Poland Street. Shelley lived there. Fanny Burney lived there. Fanny Burney later moved to Bath. She's one of those Bath writers nobody in Bath talks about. I read some of her diaries once, and she had a mastectomy while living in a house in North Parade. I used to live in North Parade when I first came to Bath. And of course then, back in the Regency period, they weren't really anaesthetics. Can you imagine that? They talk of Austen. They talk of Shelley a bit now. They don't talk of Fanny Burney. And they don't talk of Beckford because he's very politically incorrect. I think of Poland Street, and I think of the factory novels of Derek Raymond, aka Robin Cook, the Eton educated raconteur and writer who ended up running sort of long firm type escapades in property. Had to flee occasionally to the south of France, work in a vineyard, which he partially novelised in his dystopian SF novel A State of Denmark, one of the finest dystopias I've ever read. Soon I'm going to revisit the factory novels. There's 4 and then there's a 5th one, the late one from the mid-90s, which isn't so good. And I'm missing the first one. These are the second and third. This is the fourth. Annoyingly, in a royal when the others are in demis. One of these demis is a book club edition, but it doesn't matter. I like the stark aspect of the jacket design, black and white in one colour. I'm looking on ABE now for a copy of the first edition of He Died with His Eyes Open, the first one. There are two. One in Leicester, which looks beautiful, £300. One in Johannesburg, which just has like more of a stock image, at £245. I guess that's out of the question for now. If you've never read the Factory novels, they're in print from Serpent's Tail. They're very bleak, they're very black. They're set in Poland Street, or at least the policeman who is the narrator, he's unnamed. He's always in trouble with his boss. He works out of a station in Poland Street and he deals with homicides of most dreadful character, most of all in I Was Dora Suarez, which is one of the most harrowing books you'll ever read. Everybody says that, but it's absolutely true. So Blake, Raymond, Shelley, and me. What's my history in Poland Street? I used to go to the Star and Garter a lot, a pub which is about number 62, something like that. Once with a friend before we went to the 100 Club to the jazz night. That was about 2000, 2001. And then regularly on and off for 10 years with friends from Rhubarb's DVD forum, which probably isn't defunct, it's probably still online, but all the original people have vacated. It was a positive experiment in, you know, taking things out of the virtual and meeting up. They nearly all came from the home counties and they're good guys. I haven't seen any of them for 9 years. We're in touch online. I still like those days. Once, after a interview at the BBC on Radio 4, which was recorded and then broadcast later twice in a week for my second book, 100 Must-Read Books for Men, I thought it was going to be a disaster. I'd been interviewed by two top flight BBC female journalists, I guess you'd call them, presenters for this programme, and I went along as a gentleman and I wasn't prepared. But the programme was edited in my favour because there was so obviously a bias against me for even dreaming that I could write and publish a book called 100 Must-Read Books for Men. The consequence after the broadcast was that we sold 3,000 copies in about 4 or 5 days and the book went into reprint. The Guardian hated it as well. I think it's out of print now. You can probably still get an ebook of it. It never really found its audience. There were mistakes in the setting of the type, so there were typos, what people call spelling mistakes when they're just typographic things. They were never corrected because the book was reprinted so quickly. It's probably the sort of thing that'll never get published again in the current climate. I went there alone, and at the Star and Garter they don't serve food. Maybe they do now, they didn't then. So you'd sit there, you could get bar snacks, you know, nuts and crisps and what have you. And I just remember drinking pint after pint. I think I drank 6 pints of lager there, maybe 6 pints of cider, 6 pints of something, because I was so down about the way the interview had gone. I thought it was going to destroy my literary career as it stood. That was pretty much destroyed by the financial crisis and my third book come out. And, you know, it was an interesting time. I'm looking forward to going to London again, to go to the Star and Garter. And as I walked down Poland Street, wishing the large HMV was still there, where I could easily drop £200 to £400 easily, any time, I'll walk down and I'll think of Blake and Bernie and Shelley, and I'll think of the anonymous narrator of the Factory novels and his terrible murder cases. I'll go into the Star and Garter and I'll have a pint or two. I won't be burdened with lots of CDs or records or books, because those days in London are gone, aren't they? Most of the big record shops are gone. Most of the bookshops have gone. Culture itself has been murdered, and that would be too big a case even for the nameless detective of the factory. In one of the glass mirrors in the Starngarter, it has the military emblem, Honi Soit qui mal y pense, and of course Honi Soit is a John Cale album. And it was supposedly the site of the St James's workhouse, whose infirmary may have been the original St James's infirmary, the blues song famous in the States. Who knows? But I'll be visiting Poland Street again.